Be on right now then.
Yes, we are. Good call, Zane Simon. No bullshit today, all business. Hi, it's Dallas
Yep.
Winston, Bloody Elbow. I'm with my partner in crime, Zane Simon. Zane, what's up?
Hey. What?
Hey. Hey.
Hey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, fight fans across the world, because we are huge, it turns out, in the UK.
Are we?
Kind of. Yeah,
That's awesome.
it
That's,
is actually.
if ever there was someplace I'd want to be huge, I mean, you blow up in the UK, that's like what happens before you blow up in the States.
Sex Pistols.
They put you on the European tour, you go around, you fill some arenas, then you go stateside, bam, Madison Square Garden, 100,000 fans.
That's how the fairy tale happens, folks. We're
Yeah.
fortunate enough to be living it.
Yeah.
So we're going to buzz through the Bellator 124 fight card. Takes place Friday from the CompuWare Arena in Rochester, Michigan. I actually might be attending. So anyone else listening, watching, whatever, if you are attending, let me know. I'll try to avoid you if possible. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Um,
Can
this is
just put out offers that people can buy you a drink or something, and
they can
if they wanted
yeah
to.
they can buy me a fruit cocktail. Might get crazy and drink a Bloody Mary while I'm there, but I don't know. You never
Oh,
know. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
Stadium
old as
Bloody
shit.
Mary. That sounds like a wise decision.
Yeah, it does. It's like a little tomato soup with a splash of vodka in there.
That's right.
And
Take
just
it
so
first
everyone
class.
knows, we're supposed to have like horrendous storms today, so it is like nighttime out here in lovely, lovely Michigan. So actually, the main card on this is not too shabby at all. The headliner here is this one. It's not a bad fight, but it kind of caught me off guard a little bit. Emmanuel Newton, who I think I've always said is the most underrated fighter in Bellator, possibly in MMA, is taking on the hard-nosed Joey Beltran. Were you kind of surprised by this announcement or no?
I don't know. I remember everybody being surprised by it, but it's honestly the kind of thing that it doesn't really get to me that much because Bellator, like, and credit to them, it's really similar to how the UFC belts were early on, but all of their belts have gone through major, major image crises. Um, you know,
Plural for crisis there. Crises.
there you go. That's right. So, the Bellator belt, this is a belt that, oh, what's his name? The
Attila Vey.
kickboxer. Mpumbu. This is a
Oh,
belt that
yeah.
Mpumbu lost, had didn't put on the line against Travis View before losing a fight there in a non-title bout. This is a belt that Attila Vey held, and they shelved him to put on a series of four-man tournaments to get King Mo a title shot, which ended up with Carlos Newton with a sort of secondary belt, which Newton
Carlos Newton?
eventually. What?
The Carlos Newton of early
Or
UFC
Emmanuel
infamy?
Newton, rather. Emmanuel Newton. Which ended up, yeah, I was, for some reason, I'm all over the place today. It's too early for this. It's maybe noon where you live, but it's like 9 where I live, so I'm barely alive. But Emmanuel, they put on a series of four-man tournaments to get King Mo a title shot, which ended up with Emmanuel Newton getting the sort of lesser version of the belt while Vey was shelved, and they finally unified it into something reasonably legit again. But Joey Beltran, he doesn't really detract anything from that lineage right now. Maybe this is the start of something. They get Newton a few showcase title fights. He looks good. They build a couple of good challengers for him. They've got some guys on this card that'll be a legit challenge and be a fun next step. And you start to build a really legit, title lineage going forward. But right now, it's all a wash to me.
To me, it moved up as far as legitimacy when Vey took it over, because he's pretty solid, a lot of skills, and then the fact that I actually thought on the way, to the title, that Vey actually lost to Newton when they first fought. Close fight. But
Hmm.
it was one of those where, yeah, close, but I definitely scored it for Newton. And their second bout was really close too. And to me, the two biggest surprises, there was a list of Bellator fighters that they released, and it was a fairly hefty list a while back. I don't know
Yep.
if you recall that, maybe six to eight, eight-ish, eight fighters. But
I
the
think
two,
it was like 15, but
was it that many?
yeah, it was like 15, but there were only a handful of really big names or notable fighters that you know if you follow Bellator, one of which being Attila Vey, and I think the other was like Des Green, I believe, was on it.
That's what I was going to say. Those two were the only ones that I was fairly surprised at. Although for whatever reason, it seemed like Vey was never a showcase, so you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying, showcase champion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that was probably, if nothing else, that was probably a relationship that had soured beyond repair when they got into that whole thing with him being on the sidelines and Bellator said he was injured and he said he wasn't injured, and then they produced the documents to say he was injured, and the documents were like for a totally different injury from months earlier, and none of it lined up at all, and it would just got to be this really weird situation.
Yeah, and as far as Des Green, maybe not a world beater, lost to Weichel in the tournament finals, but that dude has only been training hard.
Nope, I just lost you. No. Uh oh. Hey, there we go. I think I heard something.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Am I back though?
Yeah, you're back.
You still can't hear me right now,
No,
motherfucker?
I can hear you fine.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
I, I can hear you.
Oh, you can now.
Yeah, but you can't hear
Okay.
me.
I have this annoying habit where I wrap my headphone thing around my finger, and I think I just got her wound a little too tight,
All right,
literally
we
and
are back,
figuratively.
folks. You can hear me though?
What? Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry. All
Okay.
right, before we just totally degrade the entire integrity of the show, let's get into the shit. We have two matchups that we kind of feel are worth discussing on the preliminary card. I think we talked before our last show that that's going to be, it's not a huge deal, but in order, and I feel like Bellator's taken a new step lately as far as exposure, respect from the fans. The next step I think that they're going to have to really work on is improving the overall selling power of their preliminary card. Because I think it's safe to say only the hardcores watch it now. And then there's usually at least two watch-worthy matches, guys that have been on the main card before, been in tournaments before. There's two on this one, but would you agree that that's an area that they need to kind of beef up for more,
Yeah, and I
respect
mean,
in the
I would
future?
even say that these two are two at a stretch. I mean, these are guys that have been on a Bellator card once or twice and maybe done okay, but even last week when you had like Tamden McCrory versus
Brennan Ward, holy shit, we
Brennan
should talk
Ward,
about
which
that.
got bumped up to the main card later on, like that was a much bigger planned prelim than anything on this undercard is.
Well, I wondered why initially they had Ward on the prelims because that was like in his hometown. But we should
Yeah.
talk about that fight really quick because I have a couple thoughts.
Yeah, we should talk about the last Bellator card really quick because this is going to be a pretty short card to talk
Okay.
about, and that things have changed since last week.
Things have changed. All right, so the first thing I want to say is coming in, I don't know if I mentioned it on the show, but I was a little leery about that matchmaking,
Yeah.
Brennan Ward and Tamden McCrory. And it's because if Ward, who I think is an excellent prospect, freakish wrestler, excellent throws. I think we decided he was a runner-up in the national tournament for Division 2 or Division 3. But what I was really impressed with is he stood in the pocket and threw hands with Shlemenko through that first round, and I thought beat him. So he looked excellent. To me, that matchup was no good because if he would have crushed Tamden McCrory, it would have done nothing. Everyone would have said, "Come on, Tamden's the Barn Cat's been out of the game for 5 years." And now that Tamden looked unbelievable. I mean, I was
Yeah.
flat out shocked. That is by far, to me, the definitive performance of last week.
Yeah.
Now you have kind of traded one prospect for another. So in retrospect, I would have changed the matchups around because you remember the Dan Kramer and Perry Filkins fight.
Yep.
Those two were kind of
Well,
similar
I remember
grinders.
not watching it quite pointedly avoiding watching it.
It was gritty and there wasn't a but that's exactly why I think you should have broke those matchups up and put Brennan Ward versus Kramer and Filkins versus Tandon McCrory. So that being said, holy shit, those combinations that Tamden threw were literally some of the most beautiful I've seen for a dude that tall and that long to throw that much power. And what really shocked me was how tight he was throwing those
hmm
punches. Were you as floored by that as I was?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I 5 years out, I expected him to come out completely flat against somebody who was at least, a solid athlete with a lot of decent, if maybe a little rough skills. I expected him, McCrory to be flat and outgunned. I mean, he never came off as like the best athlete when he was fighting the first go around. It was always sort of like a skilled, scrappy dude who can get in there and throw with guys and have no fear. But he just looked 10 times faster than Ward, and the power was shocking, absolutely shocking.
Yeah, so you have a guy that's that tall and lanky. That's one thing. To have knockout power and be that gangly is another thing. But to throw it with the power and the speed and the precision that he did, all of a sudden to me that I don't know what he's been up to, but he looked like a veteran striker. It was not
hmm
like he picked up where he left off before. It looked like he has been really working on that
Yeah,
technique, and it was fucking nasty. It was beautiful violence. I kind of feel bad for Brennan Ward because in front of his hometown he was all jacked up, and that was I mean, a very convincing loss. I mean, it was like
yeah,
boom, 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 you're done for.
yeah. I mean that the thing is like even though Tamden McCrory is a good fighter and a legit, even still a legit up and coming fighter, the guy's only like 28, 29 or whatever, and has with that much time off, he's no longer got the worries of wear from starting his career early. Um, but there's no sugarcoating that for Ward. I mean, that's a fight that on paper he should have won, and it's a tough loss to come in there against somebody who's been out of the game for a long time, and after you've just fought for a title and get totally shellacked. I mean, that's that's rough. It's a big step
It
back.
and it's a tough loss in the sense that I do feel like a lot of people expected him to win, and it's because he had just crested the hill, and now people kind of
hmm
knew who he was. So man, my heart goes out to him. I hope he's doing well. But from watching the fight from a technical standpoint, I don't think Brennan should feel bad at all because
Oh no,
like we
yeah,
keep saying, that was beautiful, man. I'm really looking forward to seeing how Tamden, wow, all of a sudden a bright new exciting potential star in the organization.
yeah. No, it's exactly the kind of guy that Bellator and Coker should be after right now. Is somebody like that with a little name value and a little reserved interest. And people remember who Tamden McCrory is 5 years after he fought on some UFC prelims. I mean, did he even ever make a main card? Maybe.
I thought maybe he fought Gono on the main card, but
He may have fought. He may have fought on the main card once or twice, but I mean, this isn't a guy who headlined UFC shows or anything like that.
no, but you're right actually because Tamden always got a lot of respect. People always, what's up with the Barn Cat, and he was a dude that carried a lot of respect with the fans. So that was. What else can we talk about? I mean, because I'm trying to avoid just centering the rest of the conversation on the odd Bonner Tito
Well, but
McCauley
I mean,
exchange.
so we can talk about the title changing hands. That was a big deal. I don't remember. Was that your view on it that Kern was gonna win? I don't remember.
No,
Or
actually,
that,
I love Pat Kern, but I
yeah,
picked Pitbull on
we
that one
we
for
both picked Pitbull.
kind of just that reason.
Yeah.
You know, to me, the difference in that fight is Pat is so dynamic, but he didn't. I think when he did well, that's when he really started to use angles and circling. But And any time in a fight, eventually you have to get in the guy's wheelhouse and go to work. But you really want to limit that time, and when you're in there, you want to be thrown and then get the hell out. And I thought he just was not. There was not enough of a sense of urgency to do that, to get in and get back out. And
Yeah.
that Pitbull was just throwing heaters, man. And that's what made the entire difference.
Well, and I think that Pitbull probably coming off that last fight, or remembering his last fight with Kern and having a lot of tape on Kern to scout at this point, more than he'd ever need. It seems like he came in. He's progressed technically a lot too, but he just didn't. He didn't give Kern any of the openings that Kern needs to finish a fight. Like.
And what I really liked that Pitbull was changing levels and going for takedowns too to mix things
Mhm.
up. I don't remember seeing him doing that at all, if not very often
Yeah.
at all. Do you?
I think it's something that he started to add into his game a little more lately, but it's still, I think he did it a lot more this fight than he has even in the past. I'm kind of, the Pitbull gym feels like one that's really come along in the past couple of years. It's suddenly, I mean, even Patricky Pitbull, who almost everyone had written off as a guy who had kind of plateaued and was on the decline, has suddenly turned it around and wheeled off a few wins in a row here. So
I
it
think,
feels like they're a gym building good fighters right now.
yeah, and they're getting a lot of recognition. And I actually read that during the Kohea fight, Patricky was warned by the judge, or I'm sorry, by the ref, because he was coaching so loudly. One of the judges complained that it was
That was
distracting
actually
him.
during Patricio's fight that
Oh,
Patricky was
was it?
at the Bellator event. Yeah.
Okay, my fault. And actually, it's kind of corny, but when Patricio's reaction when it was announced and they wrapped the belt around his waist, it was kind of that awestruck, a bunch of emotions, and then when he just kind of put his head, leaned down and put his head in his hands and started to cry. Actually, I mean, that was pretty touching. Good
Yeah.
dude. He's worked hard for that for a long time.
Yeah, I mean he's been a great bantamweight and he's been winning a lot of fights and it's good to see that that come to something and end up meaning something for him because I mean, a guy like Kern's crested the mountain. He's been on the top. He's had the title. It's good to see somebody else get the belt. And
And this will be pivotal for Curran because he had some issues before, personal. I think it was depression or anxiety, and I think now is going to be real pivotal where this loss is going to make him hungry and help him put that aside. Or maybe, like you're saying, he's kind of had his time, and I hope he doesn't. But there's a chance, we might see him fade out after this.
yeah. So anyway, before we jump onto the card, because I we should do that, but we have to talk a little about the Bonner Tito thing.
We do, but it's one of those things that we could really, really discuss in and out. So
Yeah.
let's just
Let's
make
give
sure
it
we
a
don't
quick
go off.
quick take. Good, bad. Trying to forget about it as fast as possible.
I'm looking at that as an acid flashback. And you never know if those are good, bad, or forget. You just don't know. It's just a very trippy sensations that overcomes you, and you're confused about your entire life. And later on, you move on. That's kind of how I'm looking at it. You?
Oh, I don't know. It was a bad thing for me for Bellator. It just really felt like, and it's so hard to separate the promotion from that kind of show. Like to assume that they didn't have a very real hand in it, even if everybody involved is saying, "Oh, I had no idea. I had no idea." And it sounds like from all corners that they had no idea that that was how that whole thing was going to play out. But it's really hard to give them the benefit of the doubt on that because it was such a big weird show. And when you see that kind of stuff, like the more that I see, the more I start to wonder how much, like this is like getting back to the King Mo and the four-man tournaments and all that kind of thing. It's like how much of a vested interest do they have in a specific outcome beyond putting on a good fight? And I don't, I really don't like to see that.
So to be honest, I didn't like it either. It was, it just came off as corny, and I want to explain why. First of all, Justin McCauley is a great dude. I've met him before. I mean, really good cat, stand-up dude. A lot of
Hmm.
respect for him. But the fact that first he was standing there in a mask, but then it would so that was weird enough. He's got the whole
Yeah.
beekeeper thing going on. But then the fact that when Bonner took it off, he actually had another mask underneath that mask, like that in itself, I was like, wait a minute. I mean, what purpose does the dual mask serve? It wasn't one enough for that? So
Yeah.
that was just weird and corny. And then the fact that to me, I cringed a little bit when Tito ended up shoving him, because then it kind of like I was like, all right, that really kind of. I think to me that made it easy to categorize the way a lot of people are. Like, well, that was corny ass WWE shit, and to me that shove at the end is really what firmly placed it in that category.
Yeah, it's it's not the best. It's not a good thing to me. I mean, and it got people talking about Bellator, so who knows? Maybe it's maybe my my our opinion is just not that important here. That could always be God,
That is always, in my opinion,
yeah.
the
God help
no.
us if that's ever actually true, but it wasn't great. Anyway, we should actually probably talk about this fight card so that we don't get too bogged down.
We will. There's one more quick thing that just came to mind, though, that I want to mention, and it harkens back to what was that big heavyweight fight? James Thompson and who was that?
Oh,
Big sloppy brawl.
was it the Korean guy he fought or
Was that
Japanese
Print?
guy?
Was that Prindle? I don't think it was a. But either
Oh,
way,
James Thompson, Eric Prindle was in Bellator. Yeah.
right, right. And then so the thing that I want to bring up is the way that they marketed that with that little video promo. Basically, exactly what everyone was thinking, like with the big dinosaurs, and okay, it's two big dudes. They're gonna throw down, and someone's gonna fall over. That to me, I loved it. It was really refreshing, and Twitter actually blew up with a lot of people agreeing. And the thing that made me bring that up was the big King Mo spot on dick riding.
Uh,
And I'm just gonna throw it out there. Obviously, that's kind of a new thing they're doing and not standard MMA fare. And to me, it depends because they're showing a lot of personality. That I
yeah.
love. You run the risk of doing something weird and unique that turns people off, and then it becomes a big negative. But to me, that's just another change or different direction that they could go in more often. Just that I've noticed, and I kind of wanted to bring up. Your thoughts on that?
I think that that kind of stuff is really quality for them, honestly. I mean, even if it's something I don't like or think is tacky, like the the thing to me is where you get into this like whole blurring of real fight, fake fight. That I think is the whole like my problem that undercut the Bonner Tito thing. But beyond that, like you're not gonna be the big professional, super streamlined, everything's always perfect and suited and tied is that already exists. Everybody has that filled. I'm all for circus MMA at that point. Like I'm all for like the weird promos and the weird entrances and guys, the weird video highlights and all sorts of stuff like that. I'm all for that kind of stuff. I think that's great and it adds personality and something different that I'm not getting out of the UFC.
So that's a great point, and we'll finish on this one. But to me, it's Pride-esque, but slightly Americanized. And I think
Yeah.
that when Pride left, it left a giant void. Some people hated the weirdness, the freak show nature of it. Some other people loved it. I mean, not that they expected the UFC to do it, but because the UFC is kind of like the MMA junkies and the sure dogs and the MMA fightings of the world, where then that's why I always laugh when people call us journalists or whatever. I mean, we're kind of not, but either way, if you want like CNN style shit, go read those motherfuckers. That's what they're doing. So to me, with Bellator being in that second place position, they can capitalize on just playing around with a little of that. And I guess my point is, I like that they're doing that. They're showing some personality. They're veering off the standard path, and I think that might be a good thing for them.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good thing. And the nice thing too is that we've already saw it with the last UFC card where they started cutting in video promos before and after, or before every fight, we're already seeing that kind of more creative marketing push the UFC to be a little more interesting and actually work on selling their fighters a little more, which they kind of went out. I remember they used to kind of do it more, but it feels like something they've gone away from over the past decade.
But even when they did it, I would say it's pretty stale. It's the guy hitting
Oh
the bag, talking about how he can knock someone out in 10 seconds with his dick and
yeah,
looking mean, usually. So, all right, so let's move on to Bellator 124. You cool with that?
yeah,
So, two undercard bouts we just want to touch on real quickly. One is Tony Hervey versus Jason Fisher.
yeah,
Tony Hervey is a former King of the Cage lightweight champ. I believe two-time champ, you said, right?
yeah. As lightweight and junior welterweight, I believe, like the
All right.
160 division that they have.
Yep. And Jason Fisher, neither of these guys might be, household names or widely recognized, but the way I'll always remember Jason Fisher is I believe it was his Bellator debut. He fought David Caveman Rickles, gave him a hell of a fight. It actually turned out to be a really close match. But I'll never forget he got Rickles locked in an armbar from his guard, and it was locked, it was deep, and it was above the elbow. And Rickles stood up, so he was in the standing position with his arms still straightened out. And he did something that turned out to be really, really innovative in that he slowly leaned over and put his foot on Jason Fisher's face, who's trying to wrench the armbar, and then slowly shifted his weight and ended up standing right on his face in order to break the hold. And, like we were saying before, it's not a strike. He generally applied pressure, so I'd never seen it used before, and actually I think it's a pretty innovative way to defend a submission in that position. Yeah?
Yeah, no, I mean it's always the kind of thing I'm interested to see fighters do, and it's something that I think we're slowly starting to see a lot more of now that the sport's been around long enough that everybody's really comfortable with how the rules work. We're starting to see guys really push the limits of the rules and try to find those gray areas. It's like seeing all the knees you're seeing to the shoulder and sternum of a guy when he's down, and it's like that is a borderline illegal move. You're really playing with fire, but if you can make it work, that's great. Or it's like John Jones headbutting people in the chest when he'd have top control. And it's like, yeah, headbutts are illegal, but nobody's going to call one to the chest.
Actually, out of everything we talked about, that's the one thing, because technically in the rules, it doesn't say you can't knee to the shoulder or anywhere else, but it says explicitly you cannot headbutt as a strike. So really, to me, that's the one that should be flagged as illegal.
Well, yeah, but the point, like, it's not. It's in the thing that I think people miss is that refs have the discretion to enforce the spirit of the rule when they're in the cage. And we've seen this before. It was like when Vitor Belfort threw that head kick at John Jones while he was doing his little like hands on the ground thing, and Jones, and it's like the ref can enforce what the rule is supposed to be there for, and those gray areas are where fighters are starting to find room. It's like, well, can I get away with this because it's obviously not what the rule is meant for.
Totally agree. Um, so either way, that should actually be a good match. Hervey versus Fisher. Hervey is extremely quick and athletic. Jason
Yep.
Fisher has an excellent, actually, guard game off his back. He's one of the few guys who's not only comfortable but can do some work off his back.
Yeah.
Um, the next matchup I just wanted to touch on, and this is one that probably very few will be aware of, but it's Mike Hernandez versus Thomas Vasquez, and my interest in this lies in Thomas Vasquez because he's got a really kind of unique traditional martial arts background. I believe maybe you can confirm the same, but I believe he came into Bellator undefeated and
Yep.
fought Marcus Galvao, who is
Yeah.
extremely experienced, nasty, formerly a Novo União guy, and actually did pretty damn good, feisty, and to me, for a newcomer to take not one but like a giant, almost a flight of stairs up in competition, I was super impressed, and he's a young guy too. So for me personally, I just got my eye on this kid. You like him too, or?
Yeah, I mean, well, he went from fighting a guy that was 2-4 in his last fight to fighting Marcus Galvao in his next fight, who's 16-6. So is definitely a huge jump up. He's an interesting guy. He's an exciting striker. He does have the TMA thing. He's definitely somebody I'm interested in watching, and I think they're giving him just the right kind of opponent to show that in Hernandez, who, at least from what I've seen, is kind of I guess I'd call it a tentative brawler, which is not the best mix of skills. Like he's a powerful, stocky dude, throws hands, has some power in his hands, but doesn't throw with a lot of volume. Doesn't, kind of sits and waits and is looking for just that right opportunity to get in there and damage his opponent and push them up against the cage and stuff like that. And a guy who's willing to wait on the outside and give you a lot of time to work. I mean, that's just kind of the right opponent to have a really interesting and diverse striking style on the outside against.
Yeah, almost kind of like a clean slate of paper for Vasquez to kind of show his skills against. Not an
Yeah.
easy opponent, not someone to run through, but a good guy that will let Vasquez show us what he's got. And before we move on to the main card, what I was really impressed with about Vasquez is he was comfortable everywhere. He got put on his back, his takedown defense, his get-ups, everything was really technically sound. And with his striking, the dude was a really good boxer. So he wasn't a guy who would throw spinning kicks and TMA shit at the wrong time. His overall striking game and his overall MMA game seemed really well attuned. No weaknesses, and hell, he's a young kid, so he's going to only get better from here.
Yeah.
Um, Anything else on that one?
No, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, like I say, it'll be interesting to see what he can do. Keep fighting decent competition. See if it's somebody that Bellator can build. I mean, these are the kind of fighters that Coker loves, is guys with kind of an interesting, exciting striking style, and you see if you can give them just the right opponents to really show off and develop that skill. And, not necessarily feeding them cans or feeding them garbage opponents, but feeding them guys that will play into their strengths.
Or not guys out of their league. That's such a big step out
Yeah.
of their comfort zone. So keep your eyes peeled on those two fights. The preliminary card will be available for streaming either on Spike.com or Bloody Elbow, 7 o'clock Eastern. 4 fights on the main card, which starts on Spike TV at 9 o'clock Eastern. First one up is Ryan Couture versus John Schulz. To me, this is one kind of like we were saying before, except maybe a little more extreme in that I think this is going to be a bit of a showcase fight for Ryan. No offense to John Schultz, but he's 5-2. He's fought 7 guys. I think he's had a couple fights in Bellator. I think he fought Amir Killa and got choked out. But to me, I mean, it's just way too much too soon. And Ryan Couture is coming off fighting guys like Al Iaquinta and still improving. So I'm looking for a very strong Ryan Couture performance here.
Yeah, I mean, the last guy that Schulz beat is 111 at Triple X cage fighting, and his win in Bellator, he has a win in Bellator against Hector Garcia, who's 3-6. Before that, it's Jay Ellis, who's 12 and like 27, and so he has yet to beat anyone with even a remotely competent record at all. I mean, that's okay for somebody who's still only 7 fights into his career, but the fact that whenever he's taken an actual step up in competition and faced somebody with a winning record, he's lost is not a good thing against going up against somebody else with a winning record. I mean, Couture's maybe not the greatest talent on the market, but he certainly hung in there with Ally Quinta, and he was able to. He has a win against KJ Noons for whatever that's worth. It wasn't much of a win, but Couture has shown himself to be competent on a much higher level, and he's getting a complete setup fight here in Schultz.
Yeah, and that's really nothing against Schulz because first of all, he's from everything we just talked about is pretty normal for the regional scene. On top of that, he's from Michigan, which is, no offense to my Michigan brethren, but far from a hotbed of top level MMA stuff, which is why, guys like Miles Jury and everyone else are going to big reputable camps. What really kind of deflated my any hopes that I could have for Schultz is that I believe he's 37 years old now. So,
Yeah,
with
I don't see
seven.
an age on. I don't have his age in front of me, but so we could be getting a lesser version of the Invicta scandal here.
Well, he was I think 36 when he fought Amir Killa because I went back and watched that fight. So
Yeah, so that's
so
the.
in either way, I mean, this will be, a chance for him to shine. For him, fuck it, he's got nothing to lose. Go out
Yeah.
and throw. And this is almost a fight where there might be pressure on Couture because everyone's going to be expecting him just to stomp this guy, and anything less than that could be looked at as a failure. So
Oh yeah, I mean this is a showcase matchup for him. He has to put Schulz away early to maintain like that's what's expected of him. Is this should be a first round stoppage or an utterly dominant victory in every sense.
I got him by first round, rear naked choke,
Yeah,
rear naked.
that's what we should see.
All right. Actually, this next fight is not going to carry a lot of name recognition, but it's a good one, and it's one that I'm really excited for because I think LC Davis has kind of been on the fringe of breaking out into, I don't know how to describe it, at least being recognized as a really legit fighter. He's been kind of on the cusp of the elite. This is a dude who I believe it not only in the WEC, but it was his first 3 fights, and this is back when he was a featherweight. He's a bantamweight now. But I believe in a row he beat Javi Vasquez, Diego Nunes, and Taurus Avicius. Am I right there?
Yep. And
All
right before
solid.
that, before he got into the UFC, he lost to Michihiro Omagawa. So,
That's right. Decision, right?
yep. So he's
Was that
he's
Sengoku or
that was
Sengoku?
Sengoku.
That's right. So, a really talented guy, too. Extremely athletic, fast, with a wrestling background. But to me, the thing that he's really come around on is his boxing. His striking
Yeah.
is looking really not only good, but it's hard for a wrestler to be fluid in stand up, and he's looking really really sharp. And
He
he's
does.
solid all the way across the board. Takedowns, his clinch game is solid. Did you get a chance to study up on his opponent, Zelton?
Yeah, I've been following Rodriguez for a little while actually. As
Let me
somebody,
just throw a weird question out there because I'm perpetually confused by this. He's Brazilian. Shouldn't his
yeah,
last name be Rodriguez?
Rodriguez. I don't know.
Well, I don't know either. That's why I'm throwing it out there. Someone's going to yell
Sure,
at us either way.
probably
All
Zelton
right,
Rodriguez.
Rodriguez. So if you
I
scouted
mean,
this cat, what do you think?
We call Rodrigo Dam. So,
It's true. It's all very true. So
uh,
what are your thoughts on this dude?
so Zelton Rodriguez, he's a Shudo champ, Shudo Brazil champ, um, Nova now fighter, legit, kind of your standard Nova now guy, counter puncher with a sick jiu-jitsu game when he sees the opportunities. Strong, powerful, and like a lot of Nova now fighters, seems to fight a division higher than he's made for, or division lower than he's made for, rather. So, he's kind of a big, powerful bantamweight at 5'8" and 135 pounds. Um, and fortunately for Davis, Davis is also a pretty big bantamweight. He was a guy who pretty comfortably fought at featherweight for a long time and wasn't, maybe wasn't huge at featherweight, but he wasn't a small featherweight. That was never really an issue for him. But yeah, Davis to me looks like he's really turned a corner in his boxing. Rodriguez, I mean, this is just a quality fight all the way around. These guys are both on good runs. They've both beat a lot of solid regional competition. Um, they both have become, are strong finishers in a variety of different areas of the fight. So I don't know. I mean, I couldn't. It's hard for me to sort of uh, take a stab at who's going to win this. Honestly.
So I'm going to go with Davis for sure, but I don't know if you picked this up on the record of Rodriguez, but he TKO'd Marlon Moraes second
Mm,
round, schwacked him, thwacked
yeah,
him, shellacked,
way
thwacked.
back in the day,
Yeah, for
back
sure,
in
but still, I mean that
2008.
that's pretty
But
legit. And
still,
I did I didn't write down all three, but I know two of his three losses are super legit because one was Luis I'll get it, motherfucker. Alberto Nogueira, who's also just known as Beitao, and
Hmm.
then Adolfo Deniz,
Yep.
who not a world beater but a solid dude. He beat Yusuf Sadalayev. So, and I don't remember who his third loss was, but either way, if
Pinheiro. Alexandre Pinheiro, who's just kind of
not
regional guy, nobody that anybody knows.
not terrible though. So if you factor in, the Moraes TKO and then the fact that his losses are all pretty legitimate, to me it's not just your standard Brazilian guy who hasn't fought anybody, and is just getting by on the Novi União name. The one thing I did notice from watching his fights, I didn't obviously study his whole career. Are you concerned? Doesn't he keep his hands awful low even when
Yeah,
he's
but
throwing?
that doesn't concern me so much. I mean, the hands low thing, I think. 'Cause, I mean, I get just as concerned by a guy who tends to really keep his hands high and shell up because they tend to just not see strikes coming and get hit really easily around their guard. So, it concerns me less that he keeps his hands low than it does that he maybe doesn't move in and out of range that well. Um, that's a bigger concern to me is that if you're going to keep your hands low, you've got to really have a good footwork, head movement game, and he moves all right, but he's not like an upper, he's not, his head's not on a swivel. He's not the kind of guy who's really cutting angles and all that. Um, in the pocket. He's not a bad counterpuncher. I mean, it's a good strategy for that. You keep your hands low, you draw your opponent in, and you look to counterpunch around their strikes. So it should be an interesting fight. I do think that Davis has a little bit more polished game. He's shown more variety in his boxing. He goes to the body and works well in combination. He really seems like he's put it all together. Uh, but Rodriguez, is no pushover. This is a good, well-matched fight.
And to me, it's going to be a good chance to find out for Rodriguez. Big stage, first big kind of fight on a big stage. And to me, Davis is kind of one of those guys who has excellent boxing technique. He does keep his hands up. His punches are fast and really straight. And to me, that in addition to his wrestling background is going to make the difference. And just so everyone knows, Connor and I talked about this before. I'm not the kind of guy who thinks a fighter always has to have his hands up. You only need to have it up when there's a risk of being punched. But to me, Rodriguez is a guy who really never raises his hands, even to chin level. He's got them fairly low, and you brought up a
Yeah,
good point in that he.
yeah. To me, I just think of it as like in MMA where there's so little defense offered by hands. Like, I mean, I look for different things out of having your hands up. Like, a good example would be Anthony Johnson. He's got an excellent hand check game where you see him and he's always got his hands like this, and when guys throw, he's always like parrying and then looking to strike around it. And there are different ways you can really use your hands well, but like and I'll admit this: Joe Soto impressed the hell out of me in his the evolution of his shell defense against
TJ Dolomite.
TJ Dillashaw, TJ Dolomite, because going into that fight, one of my big criticisms of Soto was that when somebody comes forward on him offensively, he just tends to shell up and try and absorb strikes on his arms, and that offers a lot of opportunities for fighters to hit him right in between his guard. And Dillashaw still did that, but Soto showed a lot better movement in that shell and a lot better counters off the shell than he had in the past. And those are the kind of things that I need to see a lot more than hand position because it's just one of those things that I don't take a lot of stock in MMA at all.
Gotcha. All right, so I think I mentioned there's supposed to be bad storms. It just kind of kicked up another level, and your audio started to cut in and out. So if you lose me, carry the show. Do your thing.
Okay, I can do that.
All right, cool. Should be okay though, but you
I can
you
hear
got a
you
little.
perfectly on my end, if that's
All right,
any consolation.
just in case, I'm just thinking ahead. All right, let's move on to the co-main event and main event. This is going to be the light heavyweight tournament final. Kelly Annenson versus Liam McGeary. Liam's a guy you and I both talked about a lot in the past. Extremely exciting. Um, the dude is just nasty on the feet. I mean, he's like
Yeah.
like a Ben Saunders in every vicious KO so far. Um, to me, as much as I like Liam, I'm going to take Antonsen here, and a couple reasons why. Everyone is not paying attention or even talking about the cat. He was a Division II All-American. Is that what we decided
Yep.
beforehand?
The D2
Ex
All-American.
D2 All-American. For whatever it's worth, he was a Golden Gloves champ in South Carolina. That could mean something. It could mean nothing. But so first of all, he's legit. He's more experienced. He's fought better competition. What really does it for me is that given the opponents that Liam McGeary has faced in the past, they have always been able to take him down. He's been able to get
Hmm.
away with like a front headlock, flip him over. He's just been super crafty, or he'll just immediately go balls out and try to get on an armbar, enough
Yeah.
to the point where the guy's like, "Holy fuck, what's this skinny dude doing?" And then he's able to create a scramble and get back to his feet. Unless he does have excellent takedown defense, but he just hasn't shown it, he is not going to be able to get away with that with Kelly
Yeah.
Antonsen. So to me, it's a matter of he's going to have to do that highlight reel shit real quick and efficient before he gets put on his back. And to me, that's not a good set of factors in order to win a fight.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little unfortunate in that, like, I mean, both these guys feel like they are building exactly the way they need to as legit light heavyweights. Anderson, he hit a little rough patch when he fought Francis Carmont back in 2011, and then some guy named Steve Knud, who's undefeated but has not fought a lot. It was his debut fight for Snood, which is probably why Anderson took it and expected to win, but got submitted. Um, but he had a small rough patch, but after that, he took some more slow fights against some less than maybe not the best competition in the world. But then he fought Rodney Wallace, he fought Volkan Ozdemir, and then he fought Luis Felipe Lins, and now he's taking that next step up and fighting somebody who's really dangerous and really powerful in Liam McGeary. And if he wins this, like, he's got to be a pretty legit light heavyweight. Maybe not, in anybody's top 10 or top 15 list or whatever, but somebody who's certainly above the rank and file at the bottom of any light heavyweight division.
Yeah,
And
and I think that applies for both of them, don't you?
yeah, yeah, I was just gonna say, and I think the same applies for McGeary, that he's also been built exactly the right way. He came up 7-0, fighting these guys that aren't that great. Then he fights Mike Musatelli. That's a good, solid win. And then he's fought, Egidijus, or
Valavicius.
I don't know. Yeah, Valavicius, and that's a great win. That's a huge step up in competition for McGeary, and he beat Valavicius, just completely mopped the floor with them. And now he's fighting somebody who is not only presents a new powerful problem for him to overcome, somebody with a really strong wrestling game and really strong top game, but somebody who is right in, also building a nice career right now. I mean, Valavicius is sort of, he's had a long, long career. He's been around, kicking around forever, and Musatelli is kind of a guy who's, maybe a solid regional guy, but hasn't really shown himself, separated himself from the rank and file. He's just kind of building a bit, but Anonson's, he's got some quality wins, and the winner of this is a pretty legit light heavyweight, I gotta say.
And I got to say, massive, massive advantage to Antonsen on that fight record because both, Ozdemir and Rodney Wallace are former UFC guys.
Yeah,
And, so McGeary's best wins are Musatelli, who was, I think that was his first win, but that was really Musatelli's first big step up as well.
yeah,
They were the same size. McGeary is just lightning fast. And Valavicius is really his best
fairly well into his hyper aggressive striking style. Anderson's really the first guy I think that he's faced that's really gonna challenge him in a way that other fighters haven't, and is really going to take away his best skills, which are a aggressive game off his back and an aggressive striking game. That said, Anderson hasn't shown much quality in his striking at all. He tends to be what I think of as like a swarming striker. He tends to just kind of try and loop out there with big punches to make guys put their hands up and make them distracted while he shoots in underneath.
Can you hear me?
Can't hear Dallas still.
All right. Sorry, man.
So this is a fight that favors Anderson, but I do think no matter who comes out of it, they come out looking like a pretty legit light heavyweight. Like I say, maybe not top 15, top 20, but a guy that's better than the bottom 5 or 10 guys in the UFC, a guy that's better than the bottom of the Bellator light heavyweight division, a guy that can in Bellator challenge reasonably for a title. And that brings us to our main event, still minus Dallas, who
Let me
still
try
cannot
again.
be heard.
Now? No?
Nope, still can't hear Dallas.
It's all you, man.
So, main event, then we have okay. Dallas is waving goodbye. So I'll be. This will be me from here on out. We have lost our co-host, but Emmanuel Newton, Joey Beltran's the main event. This deservedly, this fight's gotten some criticism over the past couple months. Beltran does not feel like a guy set up for a main event right now. He's since 2010, he has been on a really pretty bad streak. He's lost 7. He's 3-7 and 1 no contest that was a fight he won, but got busted for steroid use, which would put him at 4-7 in his last 11 fights. He's not put together back-to-back wins since a 3-win streak over 2010, where he beat Halls Gracie and Tim Hague and Houston Alexander. And he just seems like he's struggling to find any sort of consistency. For a while, he had this whole physical revitalization thing where he was trying to, do all these, improve his posture and build muscle mass and all that. But then he got popped for steroids, and that kind of seems to have popped the balloon that was his improvement as well. That's not a good way to, you talk about how much you're trying to improve physically and then you get busted for steroids, and it's like, well, how much were you trying to improve physically and how much were you trying to improve pharmacologically? So, if that's even a word, whatever. And now he's bumped up into a title fight with Emmanuel Newton. Honestly, I can't say that I feel too badly about this. This Bellator light heavyweight title still has yet to be proven that it's worth a lot. Emmanuel Newton, we need title holders that defend the belt often, that can keep the belt for a little while, that can create a definitive lineage for the belt. Right now, it's a little bit like the UFC light heavyweight title was back in the day when Rico Rodriguez was getting busted for steroids and Randy Couture was abandoning it and Josh Barnett was getting busted for steroids and nobody could put together seemingly one title defense without immediately losing the belt. We're a little bit in that era for Bellator. So Joey Beltran doesn't feel like any huge downgrade from that for me. Newton, of course, he's still got his funky striking style. He doesn't have a ton of power, but he's got that kind of throw anything, surprise people, scrappy style, off balance, sort of off rhythm. Beltran could trouble him just with his swarming sort of get you up against the cage and try and out brawl you style of wall and maul fighting, but Newton seems a bit too tricky for that, a bit too able to throw off those kinds of game plans. He's certainly had a similar, maybe a little more patient fighter in Attila Vey that he was able to ride out and overcome. And it's just this is a fight that this is the kind of fight that Emmanuel Newton's won time and again. I'm not really. This isn't really the kind of fight that uh, Joey Beltran has shown himself able to win. He's usually been able to win against guys who just want to get in there and outbrawl him and go down in a hail of fists kind of thing. So I would definitely give the edge to Emmanuel Newton by a mile. It should be an interesting. It should be a fun fight no matter what, kind of a showcase. You know, not maybe not the best headliner, but altogether a solid capper for a solid main card, a good solid weekly Bellator offering as they get into their last season of shows. And on that note, I think that pretty much sums up everything I want to talk about on the card, and that sums up everything Dallas wanted to talk about on the card because he doesn't really get the option. And so until next time, we've got a lot more videos coming. Remember to subscribe to MMANation.com on YouTube. That's DOTCOM. And give us a like. That's the thumbs up thing because we live off our likes, and that's my daily dose of self-worth. Dallas needs it for his heart. And watch out for the 6th round. Watch out for the UFC Vivisection tomorrow. Yeah, keep your eyes open. We'll have Knuckle Up and all that good stuff. And until next time, adios.